Okay. Thank you very much. We will start. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Planning and Development Control Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Nikos Souslous, I'm the chair, and before we begin, I'd like to remind a few housekeeping points. The meeting is being live streamed on Council's YouTube channel, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the meeting calmly by the nearest exit, which is through the doors on the right and out the main entrance. Toilets can be found through the door at the back of the room on my right. And please, can officers introduce themselves before speaking for the first time? And everyone, please make sure you use the microphones and turn them off after you're done. Before we formally begin, I would like to welcome back Councillor Alex Carmel, a long-standing member of the committee. It's good to have you back. And we move on to item 1 of the agenda, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Melton. And item number 2, declaration of interests. Are there any declaration of interests?
Yes, Chair. On item number 5, the applicant attended my ward surgery intended for residents and showed me a presentation about the application. I asked a couple of questions but expressed no view, remain open-minded, and will be participating in that item tonight.
Thank you very much. We move on to item number 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October 2025. Are the minutes of the previous meeting agreed? Thank you. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Jackie Borland for her service on the committee. We'll move on to item number 4, which is 50 Brook Green. And we have Shannon Brown to introduce the presentation. Shannon, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So the first item is 50 Brook Green. This application relates to a variation of Condition 2 of Planning Permission Reference 2020-01849 FUL, granted the 16th of September 2021, which was for the change of use of buildings 1 to 5 from office to residential, comprising 33 flats and including partial demolition and extensions to buildings 2, 3, 4 and 5, with associated bike and refuse storage, parking and landscaping, as well as a single-storey gatehouse to the front of the site. The proposal seeks amendments to the approved drawings to include a reduction in the number of residential units from 33 to 32, including alterations to the size and mix of the units, an increase to the width of the existing front light wells to building 1, relocation of the gym from building 1 to building 5, formation of new entrances and front gardens to the courtyard facing units, removal of the lean-to and rear block of buildings 2 and 3 and replacement with new Part 1, Part 2 storey flat roof extension, provision of ground floor amenity space adjacent to Oxford Gate with new doors to the rear of buildings 2 and 3, relocation of bike and refuse stores, replacement of the glazed infill extension between buildings 2 and 3 with a solid extension, alterations to the gatehouse to the front of the site, and replacement of obscure glazing at first floor level of building 4 with clear glazing. It's worth noting the pre-commencement conditions in relation to the extant permission have been discharged, and the planning and the permission has been implemented on site. Works commenced on the 12th of August 2024 through the demolition of parts of the existing buildings. This slide shows a site outlined in red. 50 Brook Green comprises a group of 5 locally listed buildings of merit known as buildings 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. These are located off the northern side of Brook Green, and the site lies within the Brook Green Conservation Area. This slide is a little bit more helpful because it identifies the buildings themselves by their number. The buildings were originally a Victorian school but were converted into office use in the 1980s and are arranged in a linear fashion around a private parking area, which is accessed via an archway underneath building 1. All 5 buildings are vacant. This shows an aerial view of the site and again identifies the 5 buildings. To the rear of block 4, sorry, apologies, which is the arrow at the bottom of the site of the slide. I'm not sure why that hasn't come up. Is Windsor Way, which is a residential development, and to the rear of buildings 2 and 3 are Oxford Gate, which is a gated mews development. In terms of the site layout, access to the site remains from Brook Green, which leads to a central courtyard via the archway beneath Building 1. As per the extant permission, 3 blue badge parking spaces will be provided within the site, all with electric vehicle charging points. Cycle parking is shown in red, which is to the rear of the site and to the front. The following slides will identify the main changes to each building proposed under this application. So firstly, Building 1, which is located to the front of the site. So these plans show the consented versus the proposed drawings in respect to the floor plans. So from here, you can see that the previously approved gym, which if my arrow will let me, there's a delay unfortunately. To the left anyway, the top left drawing is the basement, approved basement within Building 1 that is to be relocated to Building 5, which I'll discuss later. As a result of that, this enables the ground floor units within Building 1 to become duplex units. As part of the reconfiguration, it's proposed to increase the depth of the front light wells to allow additional light to those basement bedrooms. It's worth noting there'll be no change to the scale or massing of Building 1, and the size of all residential units remain policy compliant. Moving on to Buildings 2 and 3, which are in the centre of the site. So the main changes here relate to the reconfiguration of the internal layouts to provide dual aspect duplex units with living accommodation on the ground floor, and there will be bedrooms on the first floor, which I'll show you in a moment. Also happening at ground floor level to the front of the building will be the introduction of new entrances and gardens, which will face into the courtyard. And to the back, apologies, the arrow's not working, which is where number 5s are. There are windows in that elevation at ground floor level. It's proposed to change these to doors, which will then provide access to a small area of amenity space, which will be adjacent to Oxford Gate. Again, this is just the first floor, just to show that there will be bedrooms at first floor level, which will be in connection with the new duplex units. This slide is just useful just to kind of show the external alterations in a little bit more detail. So as you can see, the parts in red are the proposed alterations. So you've got the new entrances and front gardens to the front elevation, and to the right, which was previously a glazed infill extension, that is now going to be brick to match the materials of the existing buildings. To the rear of the site, it is proposed to remove the lean-to and rear block of Building 3, which on the left-hand side, hopefully, apologies, I can't get the arrow to move. You'll be able to see from the contrast on the proposed elevations, but basically it's proposed to remove those later additions and to continue the approved extension at ground and first floor level to block 2 to the rear of block 3. As per the extant permission, all new first floor windows will be obscure glazed and fixed shut between below 1.7 metres. The application is supported by a sunlight and daylight assessment, which confirms that the proposed development will not result in any additional impact on neighbouring properties beyond what has already been assessed and deemed acceptable under the extant planning permission. At ground floor level, as mentioned previously, the windows will be replaced by doors, which will lead out onto a small area of amenity space. What you should see here is there is a red dotted line, and what that's showing is the height of the existing boundary wall, which separates the development from Oxford Gate. Residents of Oxford Gate have raised concern about loss of privacy as a result of the use of these areas. What the red line shows is that the existing boundary wall is actually a minimum of 1.7 metres high along there. I can assure you that is what it says. That wall will be retained. There's a condition to that effect, and due to the height of that boundary wall, we feel that would be sufficient to mitigate any opportunities for overlooking. Moving on to building 4, which is the smaller building to sort of south of the site. There will be some internal reconfiguration of the building, and that will allow the provision of 3 duplex units, all of which remain policy compliant in terms of size. Like buildings 2 and 3, there will be new entrances and front gardens at ground floor level fronting the central courtyard, which is shown in more detail on this plan. To the rear, it is proposed to amend the first floor windows, which were previously secured by condition to be obscure glaze and fixed shut below 1.7 metres, to obscure glazing. These front onto the properties of Windsor Way. As part of the application, we've measured the window-to-window distances between the opposing properties, and it would exceed the minimum 18 metres distance prescribed under our supplementary planning document, Key Principle HS8. On that basis, we are satisfied that there would be no undue overlooking and that the glazing within those windows could be clear. There is a line which states that the window-to-window distance is 12 metres. However, because of the oblique angle, it wouldn't result in any undue overlooking. Therefore, we think that that's acceptable. It's also worth noting there's no change in the scale and massing to building 4. Moving on to building 5 at the rear of the site. The main change here is, as mentioned previously, is the relocation of the gym from the basement of building 1 to the sort of pavilion extension, which was granted to the side of building 5, and that was previously a flat, hence the reduction in the number of units from 33 to 32. Again, there's no change to the massing or scale of that building. Finally, we've got building 6 at the front, which is the introduction of a new gatehouse. So here there will be minor internal and external changes in connection with the removal of the substation, which has since been confirmed as not being required for the scheme. Again, there'll be no change to the location, scale or massing of that building. So this is a summary of the Section 106 heads of terms. But in summary, officers have secured an additional contribution towards off-site affordable housing, contributions towards community safety and public realm improvements, and local employment and training initiatives. In summary, the loss of the office use and change to residential remains acceptable. This scheme would continue to contribute towards the borough's housing stock, with the creation of 32 new flats, including family-sized accommodation, as well as supporting affordable housing. There would be an improvement to the approved living environment through the increase in dual aspect units, additional private amenity space, and improved internal sunlight and daylight levels. The proposals retain a high quality of design, having regard to the special architectural and historic interest of the buildings of merit and to the character and appearance of the conservation area. There would be no material change to the impact to residential amenity, and there would be no material change to the impact on the highway. Finally, there would be an on-site reduction in CO2 emissions of 37% through energy efficiency measures and renewable energy measures, namely higher levels of insulation, replacement windows and air source heat pumps. Based on that, we are recommending the application is granted planning permission subject to conditions and completion of a deed of variation to the existing Section 106 agreement. I'd just like to draw your attention to the addendum, which includes some minor tweaks to the heads of terms and the inclusion of 2 air quality conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to questions from members of the committee and discussion on the item. Who would like to ask any questions first? Councillor Kamel? So your microphone.
Okay. Yes. I've got sort of 4 questions.
Yeah, apologies. It's not going to be reduced in height. So the boundary wall at the moment is staggered in height with the minimum height of being 1.7 metres. Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have the floor space of the gym, but what I can say is there are conditions in terms of sound insulation, and there is a condition which restricts the use of the gym to only be used by residents and not for sort of commercial purposes. So under the extant permission, there was a payment of 1.35 million, that has been paid. And when this application came in, we requested a new viability appraisal be submitted to demonstrate there wasn't, if there was feasibility to secure any further money, acknowledging that time had moved on and that the scheme had changed. So that was scrutinised by an independent consultant. The viability appraisal did state there was a deficit. We challenged the level of that deficit, and through negotiations, the applicant agreed to provide an additional contribution of 297,000 towards off-site affordable housing.
The independent review said that it was in deficit. Yes, that one's working. So it wasn't me, it was the microphone, a bad workman, as they say. So the independent review said it was in deficit. We still challenged that and managed to get them to pay up extra, if I've understood you correctly.
So the viability appraisal that was submitted by the applicant concluded that there would be quite a significant deficit. From our independent assessment, we came to the conclusion that there would be a smaller deficit, and that was challenged. So through discussions, the applicant agreed to pay some additional money towards additional off-site affordable housing.
I didn't touch it. Must be on a timer. The on-site CO2 emissions are stated to be down 37%. Does that take into account that we're replacing windows with doors, and that will increase the amount of CO2 escaped from the residential properties?
So the target is to reduce CO2 emissions by 35%, and they reduce it by 37%, so they exceed the minimum target. It's achieved through various measures such as replacement windows, higher insulation, provision of air source heat pumps. We have to acknowledge, I think they've done quite well in order to meet that minimum standard, given their historic buildings. So, you know, being able to do significant changes to those would be quite difficult.
Thank you. I've got no real problems with this application.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your answers as well. Is there anything further officers would like to add?
Sorry, could I just clarify in terms of the size of the gym? So the consented gym was 160 square meters, and the proposed gym is 136. So it does look slightly larger on the plan, but it's probably not clear on the plan. There's actually a tree in the middle of it, which reduces the floor space, which is also a reason why the applicant has requested that the gym is located, because it would prove difficult to have a residential unit in that space in order for someone to get building insurance, etc. So, yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Alan, for getting the figures. Are there any further questions? Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Chair. If you just, from where I'm sitting, it's very hard to see the presentation. Could you go back to in your presentation where you had the boundary wall, and it's by no means. Yeah, that one there. Like from where I'm sitting, I cannot see where a red line is. So could you just please explain for reference, so I can understand what you were saying? Yeah, that's fine. Yep. Perfect. So that answers my question entirely. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions, comments? No? Okay. In that case, we can move on to voting. First, on whether recommendation 1, which is on page 13 of the report, is agreed. Councillor Trehi, are you voting for, against, or not voting?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nima?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal Tilbury?
For.
And Councillor Kamal? For. And I will also be voting for. And then on whether recommendation 2 on the same page is agreed, Councillor Trehi?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nima?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal Tilbury? And Councillor Kamal? For. And I will also be voting for, and therefore the item is approved. Thank you all very much. Without further ado, we move on to item 5, which is Shiva's house on 72 Chancellor's Road. And Shan, when you're ready, we'll have the presentation.
Yeah, apologies, we're just trying to get
Sure.
the presentation up.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. So the second item relates to Chivers House, which is on at 72 Chancellors Road. This application is for the change of use and refurbishment of the existing office building to create a 45-bedroom care home for older people. The care home will provide 24-hour care and nursing provision for specialist healthcare facilities and accommodation, including for people living with dementia. As part of the change of use, there will be various external alterations to the building, which will include the provision of a main entrance reception area and alterations to the facades, including the removal of concrete ductwork on the south and east elevations, alterations to existing fenestration, replacement of sections of curtain walling, provision of replacement roof plants and PV panels, and associated cycle parking, reconfigured car parking, and landscaping. This slide shows the site outlined in red. Chivers House is a 5-storey 1980s purpose-built office building located at the end of Chancellors Road, adjacent to the River Thames. The site lies within the Fulham Reach Conservation Area, and to the north, which is the line in red, that is the Grade 2 listed, Grade 2 star listed Hammersmith Bridge. This is a bird's eye view of Chivers House. The property contains 2 blocks at right angles, linked by a glazed extension from 1st to 3rd floor level. Within the site, here is a central courtyard, which is used for off-street parking. There are further 12 car parking spaces in the lower ground floor car park accessed off Chancellors Road. This is a view of Chivers House from the southern bank of the River Thames. To the left of the site, we have Chancellor's Wharf, which is a residential development, and to the right, we have Distillery Wharf, which is part of the Fulham Reach Master Plan, and that includes residential units from 1st floor upwards and commercial floor space on the ground floor. It's worth noting the building's been vacant since 2019. This is a view of Chivers House from Chancellors Road. From here, you can see the glazed infill extension mentioned previously and the 2 original blocks, which are at right angles to each other. You can also see the vehicle access to the site, the far end. So through those gates, that would lead to the lower ground car parking. To the right, here, there is a gate which provides vehicle access into the central courtyard at the back of the site, which provides additional car parking. This is a view of the building from the Thames Path. To the left is the Thames Path, and obviously beyond the River Thames. Okay, this shows a proposed lower ground floor plan where provision is made for 5 off-street parking spaces, including 1 blue badge space, as well as long stay cycle parking. The cycle parking is here to the left. The car parking spaces would be for essential staff visitors, such as physiotherapists, doctors, and others who require access to the site on a regular basis. All 5 spaces would have electric vehicle charging points. There is a car permit-free restriction captured by a legal agreement for visitors, general staff, and residents. And there is also a travel plan secured by Section 106 agreement. This plan shows the proposed ground floor. As part of the reconfiguration of the existing building, the ground floor will provide a new reception area, shown here, which is beneath the glazed extension at 1st to 3rd floor level, as well as communal lounges, which is here, and other facilities such as a gym, screening room, music room, library, art room, and hair salon. Just here at ground floor level, existing windows will be replaced by French doors, which will provide level access onto the newly landscaped central courtyard. This is a typical floor plan of the first to third floor levels, which will provide the 45 bedrooms. All 45 bedrooms are adaptable to individual accessibility needs. Bedroom sizes range from 19 square meters to 36 square meters and are each equipped with a bespoke medical bed and private ensuite wet room. Larger rooms have a seating area. In addition to the communal facilities on ground floor, the upper floors will also include additional communal lounges and dining areas. So these are located to the western part of the building, which overlook the Thames, and then within the sort of glazed link here between the two original buildings. As part of the external works, window sills will be lowered to provide unobstructed views from the new bedrooms and communal areas for residents. This is the proposed roof plan, whereby existing roof plant will be replaced, including the installation of PV panels and air source heat pumps. Together with energy efficiency measures through new windows and higher insulation levels, the proposal will result in a 37% reduction in CO2 emissions. This is the existing and proposed view. So existing is on the top, proposed on the bottom. And this is the western elevation fronting the River Thames. As with all of the elevations of the building, this will include the replacement sections of existing curtain walling, which are these sort of glazed areas here and on the top. And they will be replaced with back-painted glass spandrel panels. There will be alterations to the size of the windows at first to third floor level by lowering the window sills, as mentioned before, to improve the outlook for residents. It's worth noting the scale of the existing building would remain unchanged, and the external changes to the building are intended to support the building's transition to a more residential use. This is the existing and proposed southern elevation fronting Chancellor's Road. Again, the window sills will be lowered and there will be replacement curtain walling. This elevation will also benefit from the removal of the concrete ductwork, which are these sort of linear parts of the building here. And there will also be replacement of the existing garage gates with automatic doors and the provision of new doors for secondary access in connection with the reconfigured car parking. So if you can see here, we've just got gates at this level, and then below, this will be replaced by automatic doors. And this is the existing and proposed eastern elevation, again showing lowered sill heights, replacement curtain walling, and again the removal of the existing external concrete ductwork. This is the existing and proposed northern elevation, which faces into the re-landscaped courtyard. Again, showing lowered sill heights, replacement curtain walling, but it also includes the removal of the existing ramp, which is here. You'll also see the replacement of the windows here with doors, and that is all in connection with the provision of a level access to the new landscaped garden, which would be achieved by raising the ground level within the site by 1.1 meters. This is the existing and proposed view through Chancellor's Wharf. The newly landscaped courtyard will, as mentioned before, include a raised deck access to provide level access for residents. The new ground level will be 1.1 meters higher than the existing. And although there is existing opportunities for overlooking from the existing courtyard area, what the applicant is proposing to do is to install a privacy screen, which is, you can see on the bottom, which would be 1.8 meters high, set in from the boundary to mitigate against any overlooking by the residents using that space. just in a bit more detail, this shows the privacy screen. So the dark brown sort of line is the existing boundary wall with Chancellor's Wharf. Set 750 mils back from that is the privacy screen, which would be 1.8 meters high as measured from the new ground level of the raised garden. This is just a nice drawing showing the indicative plans for the landscaping. We have secured final details by way of condition. Following negotiations as part of the Section 106 agreement, officers have secured a contribution towards adult social care, which will assist with meeting a local need for local authority funded care home places and contributions towards local employment and training initiatives, as well as monitoring fees of various documents and a payment in lieu to offset CO2 emissions. As part of the negotiations, we've also secured 278 works, which would include the resurfacing of the site frontage along the Thames Path, and that's to match the public highway, which is along Fulham Reach. So that's quite a good improvement to that part of the site. In summary, the loss of the office use and change to a care home is acceptable. There will be an improvement to the appearance of the building with no adverse impact on the setting of nearby heritage assets. Subject to conditions relating to construction and operational phases, there would not be a significant impact to neighbouring properties. The accommodation provides a high standard of accommodation for future occupiers. Subject to conditions and Section 106 obligations, there would not be a significant impact on the highway network or local parking conditions. And as previously mentioned, the proposals achieve a 37% reduction in CO2 emissions. On that basis, officers request that the application is granted planning permission subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement. Again, if I can just draw your attention to the addendum, it includes some minor tweaks to the heads of terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have a speaker, the applicant, Mr. David Rowe. Mr. Rowe, if you would like to go to the top table. And you have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Rowe and I'm the Development Director for KIN, the care home operator. I have worked in the planning and development sector, focusing on elderly accommodation for over 25 years. For the last 17 of these, I have specialised in care homes in London and the South East. I am delighted that your planning officers have recommended the application before you this evening for approval. Over the last year, our team have worked collaboratively with the council and our nearest residential neighbours to design a scheme that brings back to life a tired and redundant office building, one that has been empty for over 5 years. We believe the scheme will bring numerous and significant benefits to the borough. We are revitalising a vacant and unattractive office site, proposing to create a modern, best-in-class care facility for up to 45 elderly and vulnerable local residents. This will go some way to help address the ever-growing local care bed shortfall. The repurposing of the existing building, rather than developing a new scheme from scratch, will deliver a most environmental, social and governance-friendly scheme, as well as being a carbon impact-reducing regeneration of the site. This is to the benefit of all our stakeholders, including our future residents, immediate neighbours and the wider borough. The high quality refurbishment of this key riverfront building and grounds will significantly enhance the streetscape of the Fulham Reach conservation area and views along the Thames Path. The scheme seeks to achieve a BREEAM refurbishment and fit out rating of excellent. We will be creating a new garden within the currently sparse courtyard. This includes planting many semi-mature trees on day one, which will result in a net gain of 12 trees. We will reduce local flooding risk by both improving the Thames River wall and making improvements to the on-site surface water retention capacity. The proposed new home will create new and much-needed jobs in the borough across a wide variety of roles, including care and nursing, relieving pressure on the NHS and local public health services as well, due to these staff being employed and trained directly by kin. In addition, the scheme would deliver a raft of Section 106 contributions to adult social care, community safety and public realm improvements, local employment, training and skills development initiatives, carbon offset financial contributions, and the 278 highways works to the Thames pathway. We know that every development may cause temporary disruption and disturbance. We are committed to mitigating this as much as physically possible. We are not just a developer seeking to build a scheme and turn a profit. We will be long-term custodians of the site with a long-term commitment to the community and to our neighbours, especially those at Chancellor's Wharf and Distillery Wharf. We have, and always will, take time to speak with local residents. We have listened to concerns that people living close to a development such as this will naturally have. Now I'm pleased to have received neighbour support for our proposals. In summary, we believe that our imaginative repurposing of this existing building represents a compelling opportunity to bring a vital care home service to the community in a very ESG-friendly way. Overall, we believe this is an outstanding regeneration scheme, and we're proud to have received Fulham Planning Officer support. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your support with the officer's recommendation for approval tonight at committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. If you'd like to take your seat back in the general area. Right, we therefore move on to questions from members of the committee. Who would like? Councillor Nemo as the local ward councillor. Please go first.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start with one of the sort of themes brought up by, I know there's only one objection, but it notes 12 years of construction in the area. And I know as ward council, there can be concerns about noise there, some nearby hospitality venues and the river, a pub that until recently sold pizza. Just wondering if officers can speak to sort of how that's going to be managed in this development.
Yeah, thank you. So we have, well, the application was submitted with a draft construction management plan, draft construction logistics plan, as well as an operational management plan, which we've considered. The operational management plan will be secured by a condition. In terms of the construction management plan, again, that will be secured by condition, a final version will be secured by condition, which will be approved by officers. And the outline construction logistic plan, which was submitted, because they don't have contractors on board, further detail will need to follow. But in summary, the broad principles are acceptable. But we will be securing a final version by condition, and along with that will be monitoring fees, which will allow the council to retain an element of control in terms of particularly the construction stage, to ensure that there isn't any impact on the public highway. But I think in terms of sort of the operational phase, I think with the conditions that we've got, and also given the nature of the use, I don't think that certainly the operational phase would have any adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. And again, with the construction phase, we have conditions to secure any disruption in terms of the impact to highway and on residents in terms of noise and disturbance. Sorry, I think one of our highways colleague would like to elaborate on that.
Good evening, Councillor Gareth Doherty, Senior Transport Planner. Just to add on the construction element as well, they have submitted the outline CLP, but just as an extra reassurance, as it is just a change of use with minor external alterations, it wouldn't be in the same regard as a sort of a major redevelopment with demolition and full construction. So the impact on the highway and in terms of disturbance would likely be considerably less. But as Sean has mentioned, that will all be controlled through a detailed construction logistics plan prior to commencement as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably not going to have a huge amount of destruction. I just want to move to parking. Sort of like anecdotally from residents, I know that there is quite a lot parking stress in this area, given its sort of proximity to Queen Caroline Street. You have the Apollo right at the end there, and there's been updated sort of stricter parking conditions. I know there's been sort of parking surveys carried out on this. I just wondered if you could speak more about how those surveys were carried out. What did they show about the parking stress in the area?
Yes, so parking stress surveys were carried out over 3 days in line with the Lambeth methodology. So essentially they were conducted over a 200-metre radius of the site. The reason those parking surveys were requested was because of the site is going to attract visitors. So we wanted to make sure that there would be sufficient capacity. What those surveys showed was that over the 3 days, the peak demand would essentially be 64% occupancy. And that would, based on the predicted visitor numbers, which have been calculated based on how the sister site in Hurlingham currently operates, that was considered to be adequate capacity for that.
Thank you. And with Sister and Hurlingham, I know that there's been no kind of there's no sort of permits or park space specifically for, well, obviously residences. I guess they're in a care home, but about visitors, I mean, there's no provision there for visitors, and that's not evident in any of the other care home operations. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So based on the site's PTAL of 5, it's got excellent access to public transport. So visitors will be encouraged to travel to the site by sustainable modes. And that's also going to be mitigated further through the travel plan, which is secured through the legal agreement. Furthermore, there is an additional mitigation measure. There's a financial contribution of £15,000 secured towards a future review of the CPZ, which would essentially allow potential amendments to be made to operational hours, should that be considered necessary in the future. As an additional mitigation measure, and just in terms of the car parking that's provided on site, as Sean mentioned, there would be operational parking only, and that wouldn't be for general staff. So similar to visitors, staff would be considered or requested to travel sustainably, and both staff and visitors would be restricted from obtaining parking permits for the CPZ as well.
Cool. Thank you. I think I'll leave parking there, but that's a very, very detailed and full answer. Thank you. Quickly, the report mentions a financial contribution of £305,013 toward adult social care. Just wondering if the officers know how many local authority funded placements this will secure and for how long potentially?
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the this heads of terms, so we have a policy which is HO7, which supports the provision of care homes, providing it meets an established local need. So as part of that, a needs assessment was provided, which demonstrated that the borough has an unmet need for both market-led and local authority-funded spaces. And that was reviewed by our adult social care team, and they agreed with that conclusion. So the care home itself provides market accommodation, which meets that aspect of local need. In terms of meeting local authority funded provision, the applicant has agreed to a contribution towards adult social care. And what that would do, that would help facilitate the department to assist in locating residents as close to the borough as possible, thereby seeking to retain them within their local communities. In terms of the amount, that was through negotiations with the applicant, and that was the maximum that was agreed to be paid.
Thank you. And just on sort of people, like local residents staying in the borough, I mean, Mr. Rowe earlier said that it offers somewhere for elderly and vulnerable local residents. I just wondered if officers could clarify if any of these spaces are reserved for local residents.
There's no obligation in terms of planning controls for that, but we would anticipate that the use would be used by local people, obviously, and we can't guarantee that all spaces would be, but we would be confident that there would be an element that would be used by local residents.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Councillor Trey?
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to follow that up because you said there's 45 beds, but none of them are going to be in local social care affordable levels. I'm following up from my councillor's remark about if we can't guarantee that any of those places are local, then I'm not sure what the question is. The question is, the Section 106 doesn't seem to go very far towards keeping a local person able to have a local bed and care in Hammersmith and Fulham. This is an absolutely delightful scheme in a beautiful part of the world. Yes, can I have more details? Thanks.
Through the chair, Matt Butler, Assistant Director of Development Management. We have to assess it. We're under statutory obligation to assess all applications against the development plan. Currently, the local plan policy on this, as my colleague Sean identified, does seek evidence that there is a local need for it. And indeed, the justification for the policy does talk about the objective to keep communities together as residents advance in years. But the policy doesn't allow us to require viability evidence, or indeed it doesn't set a threshold for actual provision, affordable provision. Now, the London plan also doesn't give us a hook into that, so it was very much a negotiation. We're going through a local plan review at the moment where we're looking at whether we can provide evidence base to justify putting in requirements around thresholds and viability evidence if people can't meet certain thresholds similar to affordable housing. Unfortunately, we're simply not in that position currently. We certainly are hopeful that through the detailed wording of the 106, we can get some level of commitment from the developer through those financial contribution to work collaboratively with our with our adult social services towards, if they can in any way, certainly in the first instance, look to local residents. It is a big challenge because when we've looked at this previously in earlier iterations of local plan, to put in a more stringent policy on this is very challenging in terms of viability and deliverability. And I know when we dealt with the Ravenscourt Park Hospital scheme not long ago, the viability evidence we did have there did demonstrate that it comes at a very, very significant cost to a scheme financially to secure affordable care provision in that way, especially of a specialist nature, which is probably the most needed in the borough.
Can I ask another question? Actually, go back to probably slide 2 or 3 that shows the riverside there. What I don't really understand about this development, or in terms of planning, is there's a really messy bit of the Thames in front of the building, and again, looking at the Section 106 money, I think it was £52,000 that you had towards that, but that is a kind of quite vast wasted space. I know it quite well because it's my walk every day. This sort of strange wasted space that would be fantastic if it had amenities, benches, and that's what I'm concerned about. What is the relationship between the development, the building, that piece of land going forward?
So this piece of land here provides pedestrian access and cycle access to the river walk here. So that's that surface is part of the development at Fulham Reach. The bit we're talking about in terms of improving the river walk is this section here, and apologies I don't have a better photo, but basically it's of a very different standard to the surface that's here, and actually it goes along the frontage of Fulham Reach. So it's actually this area here, if you can see, which is the bit that which would be resurfaced so that it's in line with the existing highway works and footpath surfacing for Fulham Reach. There isn't a figure in terms of how much that will cost. That will come through the 278 works. But the stretch, actually I've got a plan which would show you where that would be. If you could just bear with me one moment. This here. So the section in yellow is the area. You've got the Thames River to the left, and that section in yellow is where the resurfacing would occur. So unfortunately, it doesn't extend the full length along there, but that is an aspiration of the council, and we're hopeful through other mechanisms or pots of money that we'll be able to complete that remaining section along the River Thames. But this would assist with the sort of starting
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
May I just follow up on this, and on this slide, pretty clear what you said about the section in yellow. There is also, let's call it the corner to the right, towards the bottom of the yellow area, which is obviously within the development, and it has currently those barriers. Are there any plans for that to be developed differently, so that perhaps it doesn't have those railings that are a bit uninviting? Maybe it's more open. Sorry, your microphone, Shan. No, further down.
Sorry, if I just get up and...
Further down. That area there, yeah. Which currently is sort of a car park.
Yeah, so that's within the site. So that's the existing access into the car park area. So
Remain with railings. and all.
Yeah. So that's all kept within
Sure.
the site. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, further questions? Councillor Pascal Tilbury.
Very much. Just a couple from me. Talking about the bit in front of the proposed development on the waterside. In summer, it's a really busy, lively bit of the Thames Path. People have a lot of fun there. Sometimes people go and have a drink. Sometimes they have more than a drink. And that, I'm aware, can be quite a disruptive environment, especially if you are thinking of quite elderly, quite vulnerable people in the garden. And I was wondering if any thought had been given to how you manage those two uses of the, similar place.
Thank you. I'm not sure there's much we can do in terms of how the use of the Thames Path is, but in terms of the way the scheme's been designed, if I just go to the floor plans, what you'll see is that so at ground floor level, it's to the side there by the Thames Path. That's the sort of communal lounges, all of the bed, and on the upper floors, again, communal lounges with all of the bedrooms located away from that part of the river walk. So I think in terms of sort of noise and disturbance, I think it's been designed to ensure that sort of residents have as much peace as possible, but also ensuring that the communal spaces have a nice outlook across the river, and they can enjoy their time in that location.
Very much. If I might, I'll turn again to the parking issue. So one of the things I've seen when looking at these particular care home proposals is that very often, just because of the uses of the care home, it's a lot more car dependent than you might think, because the people who visit are family or friends. Friends tend to be of a similar age group, therefore less mobile. Family are often bringing stuff. And if they're staying overnight, as was the case in Kin's other place, then it is possibly at a time when you are not going to be fully reliant on public transport or hopping on a bike. So I think my predisposition is that very often these do actually generate a bit more demand for traffic than comparable development. And I was wondering if A, that's acknowledged in the modelling being done, and if B, if it's not, are we potentially missing out something whereby we build this and then you get a lot more traffic use, and then that really creates an issue in the area?
Thank you, Councillor. To answer your question, yes, this was considered as part of the application, and that was part of the reason why we requested the parking surveys as well. In terms of visitors that would arrive by car, that it's been accepted that some visitors will need to arrive by car, and they can make use of pay and display restrictions on street. This would allow for short-term visitor parking to take place, but the CPZ restrictions do mitigate against long-term parking. So those who do require to visit for a longer period of time will have to travel by sustainable modes and make use of the site's high PTAL. As I've mentioned as well, the parking stress surveys do demonstrate that there would be sufficient capacity within the surrounding area for the level of potential visitors to be accommodated.
Thank you. And given that we've had provision for about 12 vehicles in the existing development of the basement, and that's going down to 5, is there spare space that could be used by that, or have we basically designed ourselves out of any more flexibility there?
Sorry, Councillor. Do you mean would there be remaining space on the site to provide additional parking?
Yeah.
No, I can't speak on that. What I can say is that the proposed scheme, which is before us this evening, has 5 parking spaces as part of it, all of which are operational spaces associated and considered necessary for the development.
Thanks very much. I think for the
Sorry, if I could just jump in on that just very quickly. So the existing courtyard at the back sort of as an informal arrangement for parking, and that would be removed, which would allow the re-landscaping of that area for the enjoyment of residents. So the parking, yeah, it has been reduced, and that just to the existing basement level. So there would be no scope to provide additional off-street parking.
Thanks very much. I don't think this is going to make me vote against it by any means, because I think it's a great scheme all round. But I do occasionally worry that we might be a slightly bit more Catholic than the Pope here, as it were, on these things. And sometimes a bit of flexibility might be needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Painter?
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one of the objections, or sorry, the only objection, and it mentioned obstruction to users of the rowing club, which I assume the objector meant Fulham Reach Boat Club, which is not a sort of normal rowing club. It is a charity, and one of the things that it does and does very well is accessible rowing. So I just wanted to ensure that in the plans for any works, particularly improving the surfaces along the Thames Path, which I think would be very welcome, the efforts have been made to really mitigate any accessibility issues for all users of the boat club, but primarily thinking about the accessible rowers.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, in summary, the scheme has been designed so that all servicing, deliveries, vehicle movements would be from Chancellor's Road. They wouldn't encroach onto this the new surfacing by Fulham Reach. In terms of the work, the 278 works, that's purely in relation to the footpath in front of the site. So in terms of any existing access for the boat club, that would remain as is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kamel?
Thank you. Just some simple questions to start with. You state that there are 45 bedrooms. Are they all single occupancy, or are they single and double? And what is the projected maximum occupancy?
And the plans show that they're single occupancy.
Thank you. Next, I noticed that there's significant new fenestration and the insertion of new doors. And given that the river is used for various activities, has there been a glint and glare assessment done on the effect of the new fenestration?
So in terms of the new fenestration, so the changes are quite minimal. So in terms of, if you can see the existing openings here, that basically the sills are lowered in line with the sort of darker brick course to improve the sunlight and daylight levels. In terms of the curtain walling, that's not being increased in any way. It's just including a sort of backing to it, because those spaces will be used for, in this case, for bedrooms. But to the front, again, there's no increase to the glazing there. It's just purely modifying that. And at ground floor level, that would simply be the replacement of existing windows with French doors, so that there aren't any new elements of glazing, new windows, in addition to what's already there at the moment.
I was under the impression that the nature of the glazing was changing and it was going to be shinier than the existing clear glass. It's not going to be clear glass, is it?
So we haven't been given final details of that, but we do have a condition which would secure approval from officers in terms of any final materials. But that is something we can consider when those details come forward.
If you could, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So, Councillor, just to carry on from this point, I think on the, if we, Sean, if we just go to the elevations onto Chancellor's Road, just to explain the change. So the main elements of glazing that will be subject to change are these elements that are kind of on the kind of cantilevered element of the building facing away from the river. So they'll be the main parts that will be changed. And as Sean said, the other changes are really kind of the minor enlargements of the fenestration elsewhere to make the daylight, sunlight into the bedrooms obviously more appropriate, really. So it wouldn't be anything to impact upon the river uses in that instance.
Thank you. If I could just move on to the next thing about the payment. You mentioned that the Section 106 heads of terms has £305,000 put in towards adult social care. And it also says, and other community safety and public realm improvements. What percentage of the what number of the 305,000 is actually an offset against the fact that it's a 100% market facility?
Through the chair, that's not been identified at this stage. We have an internal governance process where various departments who are mentioned who would qualify would essentially put together proposals of various projects or initiatives they may have, and then that goes through an internal process of agreement and allocation.
Thank you. Yes. Moving on to the, it was stated that it was hoped that the facilities would be utilised by local residents for those receiving care there. Do we have any knowledge of the site at KYN Hurlingham? What percentage of residents that now it's up and running, because I was walking past it the other day, are actually from the borough, and what percentage are from outside?
Apologies, I don't have that information.
I did actually vote for that one, I remember. The other one is also on the subject of the payment in lieu. I remember when we did the Hurlingham Road care home, they provided subsidised beds for local residents. Why is that not possible at this location?
Through the chair. This was the preference from colleagues in adult social care, that they felt this was a more effective and better way of mitigation. So we took their lead on that.
I take it that your hands were tied by that. It seems remarkably short-sighted to take a one-off capital payment. You can't even say what percentage of that will actually go to adult social care as opposed to community safety and other public realm improvements, because there's a bidding process internally. And they're going to have, 45 bedrooms paying out God knows how much a week. £2,000-3,000 a week for a bed there, I'd have thought. So you can do the math yourself on 45 things, and the sum of 305,000, which is split between three different pots. I think I'm surprised that that was the maximum that was done, especially as the report said that when it comes to adult social care beds for residents of the borough, I think it was 46% of people have to go out of borough because there is no even vaguely affordable provision for them within Hammersmith and Fulham, which is where their family ties are and their support networks. So I have to say, this is just like KY and Hurlingham is a beautiful scheme. I am very disappointed at the provision for some of the most vulnerable in our society that is provided by this.
If you would like to add anything to it, especially in terms of the costs to residents or comparisons with the Hurlingham scheme, you're very welcome to.
Through the chair, I could only really reiterate what I advised the committee earlier in relation to Councillor Trahey when she raised this point. I wouldn't have much more to add than that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, in that case, we shall move on to voting. First, on whether recommendation 1 in the report is agreed, that is on page 66. Councillor Trahey, are you voting for, against, or not voting?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal-Tilbury?
For.
And Councillor Kamel?
For.
And I'm also voting for. And then on recommendation 2, on the same page of the report, Councillor Trahey?
For.
Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal-Tilbury?
For.
Councillor Kamel?
For.
And I will also be voting for. Therefore, the item is approved. Thank you very much, Sean. We'll now have a small change of personnel, and we'll move on to item number 6, which is 316 Wandsworth Bridge Road. Roy Sagba-Power will be presenting as soon as possible.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to number 316 Wandsworth Bridge Road. The proposal itself involves the redevelopment of the site, which is currently vacant and partially cleared, to provide a 4-storey mixed-use building comprising commercial at ground floor for Class E, with some residential development, and then residential above on the upper floors with associated ancillary development. This is an image of the application site on the left-hand side. You can see the area identified in blue on the map. So it lies at the junction with Wandsworth Bridge Road and Hugon Road. There's also on the opposite side of the road is Stevendale Road. So it's a sort of a crossway, if you like. And then on the right-hand side, you have the site highlighted in red, and it's just showing its proximity to the Hurlingham Conservation Area. This is a series of images just showing, again, the context. So the image on the left shows the site in red and the surrounding urban context which it sits in. So going north, that's going towards Wandsworth Bridge Road. Going south, that's going towards Fulham Town Centre. And then you've got Hugon Road on the right, which fronts part of the site, and Stevendale Road to the left. And there's a tower block which you can see is about 20 stories directly opposite the site. And then the image on the right-hand side is the application site itself on the corner with Hugon Road and Wandsworth Bridge Road looking south. And the image on the bottom left is the front elevation on Wandsworth Bridge Road with Bridge Studios to the left, which is a 2-story commercial building, which has got approval for conversion to residential via prior approval and for some various extensions. And then the image on the right-hand side is just a view looking east towards Wandsworth Bridge Road from Hugon Road, and just gives a context for the height and scale of the buildings in Hugon Road, that terrace. So just by way of background, there's a bit of relevant history here. In 2023, there was an application that was refused planning permission by the council under delegated powers in relation to what we regard as an inefficient use of land and floor space. And we felt that the applicant at the time was deliberately oversizing the units to avoid triggering the affordable housing contribution, which would be 10 and above. And we also had concerns that the legal agreement to secure car-free parking had not been signed at that point. The inspector looked at this back in 2024 and dismissed all of our reasons for refusal. However, he did focus on the quality of the amenity space that was being provided by the development at that time, essentially saying it was poor quality. And so the appeal was dismissed just on that grounds alone. So this is just trying to show an image of what's being proposed here. So you can see the 20-story building on the left-hand side on the Wandsworth Bridge Road opposite the site. The site in the top left image, you can see it's a sort of 4-story frontage along Wandsworth Bridge Road mainly, and then it steps back along Hugon Road. The image on the top right is the front elevation looking north towards Fulham Road, if you like, towards Fulham on Wandsworth Bridge Road, and then Bridge Studios in the foreground. And then the image on the bottom left is the corner location. You can see the height in relation to Wandsworth Bridge Road and to Hugon Road and how the property steps back. And then the image on the right-hand side just simply shows the view from Hugon Road looking back towards Wandsworth Bridge Road. So you can just about make out the edge of the building at that point. So this again is just trying to show some context. So the application site proposes 4-story building, which steps back towards the rear. And you can see that from the sort of massing model that's shown there. The image on the top right shows the development next door, which is the Bridge Studios, and that has a frontage which is adjacent to the application site. And you can see the existing building is 2 stories, and they're proposing to add 2 stories to that, which was allowed on appeal. So they do have consent to progress that, which is still extant. The reason for showing you the image at the bottom is just to show how the proposed building steps back towards the rear as you go towards Hugon Road. It's just showing some elevations. So the front elevation is the top right, showing that bay configuration with the commercial frontage and residential above, and the roof level, you've got some terraces and plant. And the building just to the left, which is here, is part of the Bridge Studio, so that's outside the site. And then the bottom image is the elevation towards Hugon Road. So you can see again, it's at 4-story heights along the Wandsworth Bridge Road frontage, and it steps down towards the rear, so that it sort of marries up with the properties in Hugon Road, which are 2-story terrace. So it creates a nice continuation of that. This is just showing the elevation that would be at the rear facing Hugon Road. So there's a property which is perpendicular to the site at the rear. And it's just showing the treatment where the windows have been obscure glazed or they're set back to prevent any sort of overlooking. And similarly, the image on the bottom is just showing the windows which would be facing Bridge Studios. So you can see they're obscure glazed on that sort of left-hand side where they've got this sort of screening. So there's no overlooking to any of those properties. This is showing the proposed layout. So you can see at ground floor on the left-hand side, you've got this blue area along the frontage, which is mainly the commercial area, which is about 215 square meters. Then you've got some ancillary spaces to the rear, which is for refuse cycling, cycle storage, and other service and storage facilities, as well as an access point to the main building. And then to the rear of that, in this part, one of the units is a masonette unit, which actually is, if you like, an end terrace property, which adjoins the Hugon Terrace. And that property is 3 stories high, and it includes a privatised garden to the rear, which is highlighted in the sort of salmon colour. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a series of flatted units. Units 4, 5, and 6, which are various sizes. And then again, the masonette unit 3 is across those 2 levels at ground and first floor. And then this is just showing some more floor space, but notably unit 3 again is the masonettes, and it's also got a roof terrace at the rear as well as the garden in the rear. So it's improved amenity space, and the other units have various bits of balcony and terrace. At roof level, interestingly, you have the highlighted in red. You've got the roof terrace areas which are provided for the family units, which are on the floor below. So you've got 2 quite large family units on the floor below, and these would have access to roof terraces at roof level, which are set back from the edges, but they're quite generous size, and they are accessed via lifts which go up through the building, so they have separate access and are enclosed accesses which provide level access for those units. There's also some plants which you can see highlighted in blue, and that includes some air source heat pumps which are highlighted in green, and then there are some solar panels which are highlighted in the labelling. So this is just a summary of the range of units that are proposed. Notably, the first 3 units, units 1, 2, and 3, they are the family size units. These are the units that the inspector raised greatest concern, and basically suggesting that the communal space that was being provided previously, which is now actually part of a privatised amenity space for unit 3, means that the amenity space that's being provided for those 3-bedroom units is substantially increased. So the figures highlighted in red are the proposed amenity space areas, and the figures to the right of those, which say refusal amenity space, those were the ones that were proposed previously. So you can see the significant increase in floor space area. All the units meet minimum requirements or exceed them and are generous. Again, just showing at roof level, there's some green roofs, and obviously the effort has been made to make sure those are contributed and designed within the scheme. We've had 5 objections on various matters, notably height and scale. I've sort of touched on that and the impact on the conservation area and amenity, which I will come to shortly. So in terms of residential amenity, the nearest property, or there are 3 particular properties that are impacted. One of them is Hugon Road, which is highlighted on the image to the top left. And you can see the blue box, if you like, is the proposed scale and massing of the proposed development. And it sets back. Notably, in terms of Hugon Road, you can see the image on the right-hand side. That's the elevation facing the site, and those windows at first floor are the only windows facing the site. There are no windows at ground floor facing the site, but most importantly, those windows are non-habitable or obscure glazed. So they are, they're not habitable windows, full stop. So they're not impacted in terms of either daylight and sunlight outlook or privacy. And the bottom image is just showing what those would look out onto. This is the Bridge Studios, which is to the south. So I mentioned previously that this application is this building, which is, you can see the elevation on the top right, has 2 windows in it. That building was granted prior approval consent for 4 flats. and that is still extant. And following that, the applicants came in with an application to seek 2 additional floors on top of that building for 6 further flats, and that was allowed on appeal. So as it stands, neither of those 2 applications have been implemented. So we should be considering the impact on the existing building, and as it stands, the existing building is in commercial use, so there would be no impact in terms of residential amenity. However, we can't ignore the fact that there are consents for residential. So in terms of the prior approval, that first floor, which you see there in the image on the right-hand side, those would be served by habitable windows, which include a bedroom and a living room, dining room area. At the time of the application, which was back in, I think, January when it was first submitted, those were the rooms, but since that time there's been a prior approval variation application. So one of those rooms is now proposed to be a living kitchen room, dining room. But in either case, in terms of impact, we feel that in this urban location, there would be no, the impact is accessible in terms of daylight and sunlight. Similarly, in terms of privacy and outlook, we don't think there would be any significant harm to those windows. And then this is looking to the north, which is on the opposite side of Hugon Road. So you've got numbers 2 to 4 Hugon Road, which on the photograph, which you can see the building that's in blue. And that is number 2, and the building next to it is number 4, 2 stories, and then the building on the corner is 314 Wandsworth Bridge Road, which has residential at ground, so retail at ground floor and residential above. Essentially, we think the impact in terms of outlook and privacy is all acceptable, and there are some minor or imperceptible changes to the windows opposite at Hugon Road or and 314 Wandsworth Bridge Road. So overall, the commercial element of this meets local demand and it supports the vitality of an adjacent key local shopping centre, because number 314 is actually the start of a shopping frontage. There's 9 extra units provided, which meets our housing supply. The quality of the accommodation is considered to be very good. The scale of the proposed development is in keeping with the character surroundings, which are variable and sympathetic to the adjacent conservation area. In terms of impact on neighbours, again, I've said this already, but so we think the impact is acceptable. Our highways colleagues, Air Quality, Environmental Protection, have raised no objections subject to various conditions about noise, construction logistics plans. And there's also car-free arrangements proposed as part of the Section 106 and a 278 for mitigation to the highway works. And notably, there's a reduction of 71% in terms of CO2 emissions for the residential element and 49% for the commercial element, which is quite small anyway. And the proposals themselves include several solar panels, air source heat pumps, and green roofs, in addition to much improved materials on the site, which would help to reduce the emissions. So, although the reduction in CO2 is noted, there's still be a contribution which is fairly modest for the scheme of this size, but essentially there's a contribution there. There's also a biodiversity net gain contribution and some air quality monitoring, and various highways obligations in the Section 106 are proposed, notably 15,000 towards the parking zone, which of CPZ in this zone, so there's a review of that. Yeah, and obviously other bits and pieces for the local employment. So we are minded to recommend approval.
And I understand you have an addendum as well, which you mentioned is quite extensive. So if you could run through it.
I'll just draw your attention to the addendum. So the key ones are that there are 2 additional conditions that have been proposed. One, trying to obtain more detailed drawings and ensure the quality of the window opening styles is consistent with the design. That's condition 38, a new condition. There's also a new condition proposed, condition 39, which is seeking a revised energy strategy, which may end up achieving higher CO2 reductions, but at this stage we don't know, so we're just seeking further details on that. And then also there's a reference under the heads of terms to a contribution of £21,500 towards biodiversity next gain monitoring. And that's it. The others are just for clarification.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We move straight to questions from members of the committee. Would anyone have any questions for this? Councillor Pascal Tilbury.
Okay, I'll kick things off with one about the proposed shop use. Now that stretch of Wandsbridge Road has had a few difficulties retaining shop units. It's actually had commercial premises converted to resi in the past 3 or 4 years. My worry is that and a lot of the existing units there have been sort of fast food outlets that are here today and gone tomorrow. So my worry is that we agree to this, and then we are told we can't actually let the shops, and can we vary it to get to development of potentially more than 9 units. To what extent have we really interrogated the viability of commercial premises on the ground floor?
The chair. So, very good question, and is something we did look at as part of the planning assessments. The applicant obviously thinks that a commercial unit in this location would be appropriate. We were obviously trying to get a little bit more on the affordable housing and housing contributions, so there was a bit of toing and froing between us and them. So we asked them to provide a more detailed a marketing study, which basically showed from their perspective that there was demand in the locality. They pointed to some shops on the opposite side of the road, on Wandsbridge Road, where there's a vet that was recently allowed, although it's a slightly different type of unit. It was quite a large unit with a small retail frontage at the front, but quite a large unit. And then they pointed to a couple of other locations on Wandsbridge Road where there's recent lettings have been successful. So on that basis, they were able to demonstrate there was demand. Obviously, from our perspective, we tried to push on that, but there's only so far we can go. We had no reason to believe the information they provided to us was not robust. And we're conscious that we've obviously had an appeal on this site for similar proposal, albeit the only difference really is just the amenity space. And the inspector didn't raise any concerns about the commercial uses at ground floor. So we have to be very careful from our perspective of how we deal with that.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Just to jump on Councillor's point, if the applicant were to, through the course of the development, apply for the commercial unit to be changed into a residential unit, do we have any powers to retrospectively ask for an affordable, I guess the new unit or any of the units to be affordable? I know we are able, as applications progress with bigger developments, obviously, to make those changes, especially when they have multiple stages of development. Is that something that can be done?
Simple answer is no, because it's below the threshold. If it was above the threshold for the affordable housing, I triggered affordable housing, we'd be having that discussion now and be trying to get them to sort of contribute. There would still be an option for them to submit a viability assessment, and if that viability assessment showed that there was nothing that they could provide on site, we would obviously test that. But in this particular scenario, there's nothing we could do. We would, if they were seeking to change the commercial units at ground floor later on, then we would they would need to submit a plan application for that. So
sorry, could there might be a possibility, but it depends on the circumstances, and we would get council's advice at that stage if an application came to convert it, because there have been cases for and against, and we'll need to consider that carefully. But there is there may be an opportunity to say that this was always, in the back of their mind, and it's one scheme, even though it's come forward as 2 separate planning applications.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Was it something you wanted to?
Sorry, yes, this is still on. Yes, I was going to sort of say that point as well. Can you just confirm that since this isn't a key protected local shopping area, would they be able to apply for permitted development to change the commercial unit into a shop? And in which case, can I propose an amendment to the conditions, as we have done before in similar circumstances where this has been raised, that as part of the granting of this permission, the permitted development rights to turn the ground floor shop into additional residential shall be withdrawn for this site?
Yeah, there's no reason why committee can't add that condition. Certainly, yeah.
Didn't quite hear what you said there.
There's no reason why committee couldn't add that added committee condition. Yeah.
Councillor Kamel, would you like to formally propose the amendment? But give us some wording, perhaps, for legal also to note, and then formally propose.
We've done this before. There was that one on Chancellor. She knows the standard form of the condition, because I've requested it before, and they've come up with beautifully crafted language.
Yes, I mean, he can leave the officers to come up with the wording. It's just that he needs to recommend that that is added as a condition, and it needs to be seconded. And
I formally propose that the permitted development rights for the ground floor commercial unit on 316 Wandsworth Bridge Road are withdrawn in the light of discussions that have been had.
Thank you.
Formally seconded.
Councillor Pastor has formally seconded. Thank you very much. I guess we vote then before the recommendations. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Pastor, you had another question.
Question on parking. Right, twice in an evening. Lucky you. Given that we had, as council, pushed back or rejected the previous one, and that the inspector rejected our refusal on the parking grounds, and given the fact that this is with a pretty low PTAL of 2, and the local plan says that actually if it's 2 or low, then you can have on-street parking. What was the reason for sticking to the no on-street parking position on this one?
So obviously that application was considered on its merits, and I think in the round the inspector looked at our reasons and decided that that could be dealt with by suitably worded legal agreement if that was to progress. So he didn't think that was sufficient reason to withhold the consent on those grounds, but had other grounds. So that's why. So we could still, in this circumstance, be adding a unilateral undertaking or arranging for a unilateral undertaking for this application. So yeah. And that's reasonable, and the applicant has actually agreed to that as well. So, yeah.
So this represents something that the applicant has agreed to?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Councillor Kamel.
Thank you. Would you agree that the proposed provision of 9 residential units does not optimize the full housing capacity of the site by failing to demonstrate that the development could not provide additional units within the building in order to trigger the threshold for affordable housing contributions on or off site?
Well, that was our view when we refused the previous application, and the inspector took a different view, and that is a material consideration in determining this application, because if we were to go against the inspector's decision, we could be at risk of costs awarded against us for unreasonable behaviour. So in those circumstances, I feel that we are binded by that decision to, you can take a different view, as a committee, but there is a risk.
But I think legal would back me up and say that there have been decisions up and down the country that go both ways, and it is something which the committee could bear in mind, because as members of this committee who've been around for a long time know, I have a predisposition, but not a predetermination, against 9-unit schemes. And the number of times that people come here with a 9-unit scheme, they are, now I won't use the word I want to use.
Thank you very much. Got the points which you've made many times, and yeah, it is an issue we've noticed. Anyone else with questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Kamel.
There was one other thing. I noticed that in the conditions there were hours limiting the use of the commercial premises, and given that the local newsagent, I think round just about 10 doors down, opens at 6 o'clock in the morning, have they given any indication as to what type of commercial usage that they want? I think 7:30 in the morning, if it's going to be a shop or something, is probably a little late, given the mainly sort of semi-industrial nature of the neighbourhood and the noise that is already generated on Wandsworth Bridge Road. And I think, why did you come up with a minimum of 7:30 start and an early close time? Because anything that's more likely to make the premises unlettable is not good if we want there to be a vibrant commercial presence there.
We did consult with our colleagues in noise protection, and that's a sort of standard approach that they take. And if indeed the applicant has a commercial letting which is at stake and they might want to vary those hours, they could come back and vary those hours. So yeah, there's flexibility there.
I'm surprised that Noise recommended that, given the nature of Wandsworth Bridge Road and the amount of noise it already generates and the amount of things that already occur on there. But if that is the reason, so be it. Just moving swiftly on, the 71% reduction in CO2. Where do you get this figure from? It is a blank site. The building has gone. And if you're going to claim 71% from the old building, which was ramshackle to say the least and had no energy saving measures whatsoever, did you include in the calculation for the 71% reduction the amount of CO2 that was released during the demolition?
I couldn't honestly say whether the CO2 calculation for demolition was included, but what I can say is that this, what I can say is that the 71% relates to the residential element and the 50% or 49% relates to the commercial element. And those figures have been fact checked by our climate change team and our colleagues in environmental quality, and they are satisfied that they are reasonably accurate.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? In that case, we will move on to voting. Before we have the recommendations, we will have the welcome amendment that's proposed by Councillor Kamel to add the condition. Would you be able to read it out for us? Or, tell us about.
So it's a condition to withdraw the permitted development rights to convert the property, the commercial unit, to residential property that currently exists. So the officers will add a condition and provide suitable wording to secure that.
The effect of the condition being that if the commercial unit was to be changed to to residential, it would have to have a proper planning application and then to go through a proper process. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, Councillor Trehi, are you voting for, against, or not voting on the amendment? For. Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
Against.
Councillor Walsh?
Against.
Councillor Pascal-Tilbury? Councillor Kamel? For. And I will also be voting for. Therefore, the amendment is agreed. And now we move on to voting on the recommendations, on whether recommendation 1 in the report, which is on page 123, is agreed. Councillor Trehi? For. Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal-Tilbury?
For.
Councillor Kamel?
For.
And I'm also voting for. And then on whether recommendation 2 in the report on the same page is agreed. Councillor Trehi? For. Councillor Painter?
For.
Councillor Nemo?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Pascal-Tilbury?
For.
Councillor Kamel?
For.
And I'm also voting for, and therefore the item is approved. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the substantive items and the end of the meeting. Thanks to everyone who attended and contributed, to all the officers and members of the public. The draft minutes will be published on the website shortly, and they will be formally approved at the next meeting, which is on the 26th of November. In the interim, if you have any questions, please contact the case officers and the committee clerk. Thank you very much.